Hello, it's Jim Hutchins for the Jerusalem Connection Spot Report for October 15, 2017. Well, last week the President decertified Iran. Now, I'm not exactly sure what all that entails, but it's an attempt to hold Iran accountable for its nuclear proliferation. We'll have to wait and see exactly how that develops and how Iran responds. There's an article this past week by Elliot Abrams. Elliot Abrams is a senior fellow for Middle East Studies at the Council on Foreign Relations. I want to just read some excerpts from his article. He says, while we have been debating, Iran has been acting. He said Israel has been reacting. Israel has struck weapons convoys in Syria 100 times in the last 5 years, bombing when it saw an Iranian effort to move advanced weapons to Hezbollah in Lebanon. Now there are reports that Iran is planning to build a military airfield near Damascus in Syria, where the Revolutionary Guard of Iran, Revolutionary Guards, could build up their presence and operate. That Iran and President Bashar Assad's regime are negotiating giving Iran its own naval pier in the port of Tartus, and that Iran may actually deploy a division of soldiers in Iran or in Syria. And such developments would be unacceptable to Israel. And it will convey this message to Russia and to the United States. Previous Israeli efforts during Netanyahu's 4 visits to Moscow in the past year to get Russian President Vladimir Putin to stop Iran, these efforts have failed, which suggests that Israel will need to do so itself alone. They'll have to come against Iran alone. Unless the new Iran policy being debated by the President Trump administration leads the United States to seek ways to stop the steady expansion of Iran's military presence and influence in the Middle East. Whatever the American conclusion, Abrams says, if Iran does indeed plan to establish a large and permanent military front in Syria, complete with permanent naval and air bases and a major ground force, if that's the case, Israel will have fateful decisions to make. Such an Iranian presence in the Mediterranean and on Israel's borders would change the military balance in the region and fundamentally change Israel's security situation. Under Obama's agreement, we must remember limits on Iran's nuclear program begin to end in only 8 years. Iran may now perfect its intercontinental ballistic missiles program, and there are no inspections of military sites where further nuclear weapons research may be underway. Senator Tom Cotton said recently, if Iran does not have a covert nuclear program today, it would be the first time in a generation that they haven't had. Israel could be a decade away from a situation where Iran has nuclear weapons and has bases in Syria, and could logically therefore even place nuclear weapons in Syria, just miles from Israel's border. As one Israeli military commentator recently wrote, quote, if the Israeli diplomatic move fails to bear fruit, we, that is Israel, and the Iranians moves that make it a growing possibility for a conflict with the Iranians. I would say this from the scriptures. We are simply prolonging the inevitable. There will be a conflict with Iran. I think the scriptures refer to that. It's going to get worse before it gets better, folks. Zechariah says this in Zechariah chapter 12. Verse 2, he says, I'm God speaking. I'm going to make Jerusalem a cup that sends all the surrounding peoples reeling. Verse 3, I will make Jerusalem an immovable rock for all the nations, and all who try to move it will injure themselves. Those who try to move and come against and defeat Israel will injure themselves. And then the leaders of Judah will say in their hearts, the people of Jerusalem are strong because Yahweh Almighty is their God. On that day, God says, on that day I will make the leaders of Judah like a firepot and a woodpile, like a flaming torch among sheaves. They will consume right and left all the surrounding peoples, but Jerusalem will remain intact in her place. That's what's coming. A monumental victory for Israel. Unfortunately, that's going to lead to a prelude to Armageddon. We need to be prepared. God's people need to be prepared. That's what's coming prior to the coming of Jesus. Till next week, Od Kiyavo Shiloh, until Messiah comes, Yivareka Yahweh. Yahweh bless you, bless those you love, bless those who love you.